Flare is a blockchain network designed to bring interoperability to various blockchain ecosystems, including the XRP ledger, Bitcoin, and others. It can handle large volumes of transactions without sacrificing speed or efficiency, and the beauty is in the Avalanche consensus, which offers high output. The smart contract capability at the layer 1 in terms of function allows developers to build decentralized applications. It shines in data, use of AI, and tokenization of real-world assets. Fractionalized ownership and peer-to-peer trading attracted Uppercent and was part of the reason behind choosing Flare as their power. Uppercent tokenizes online education, a real-world asset you can own, trade, and sell when you're done. A link to this first course will be in the description of this video. Now sit back and enjoy the 20-minute conversation I had with co-founder Jake Lee.
Firstly, Eri, thank you very much for inviting me to have this conversation. I think you and I both share an extreme passion for the future of real-world assets as a major use case on the blockchain. Real-world assets can be two things, tangible and intangible. So tangible are things in the real world that are valuable to us. That might be a watch, for example. That might be a gold bar, a diamond, a piece of art. The other side is intangible. So a really good example of this is music. They can no longer sell CDs and albums to create money. They basically have to become, they have to make their money through selling merch and through concerts, because there isn't much money for them in producing music online and uploading onto these big platforms anymore.
I heard a video just recently where Snoop Dogg was talking about a song that he had 1 billion downloads to, and it only made him $45,000. When you think about the 1 billion downloads, and that was all he made from that particular song, it's really not structured fairly. The music and the art is good because I think that when you bundle that into on a blockchain that's fractionalized, you are providing hundreds or if not sometimes thousands of the digital representation of the rights to use that image, and it's wrapped in a smart contract. And the important thing about a smart contract, as I'm sure you know, is that it provides that efficiency to ensure a rule set is followed. So it can be a rule set that includes KYC, it can ensure payouts, it ensures verification. It's taking us into a non-paper world, which was full of side deals, human error, friction for time and cost. And there was lots of middle layers, which also added friction and cost. So I think that the tokenization and being able to fractionalize that and prove the ownership where you can actually exercise certain rights that are defined, especially for music and art, is amazing. So I know that a lot of people talk about real world assets being invoices or real estate equities, even parking spaces, and there's going to be trillions of dollars. I think the real estate market alone is estimated to be at 300 trillion. So if you take all of these assets that are tangible and then the intangible, I don't think anyone's really put a figure on it, to be honest. I don't think I think you could make some estimations and get a guess that's close, but I think it's bigger than what we are imagining.
And this is the vehicle that takes blockchain to the masses and brings blockchain adoption into the real world.
Yeah. And lucky for you, you're in a part of the world that is really ahead of most regional areas. Being in Dubai, you have the new VARA framework. And I think that that's going to just give your project an edge personally. But I do want to talk about your project, because you've outlined and identified a real world asset that's quite unique. And I don't think anybody has tokenized this in the way that you've done it, nor brought that fractionalization component. So kind of tell us a little bit about that.
We believe that kind of tokenizing, well, at its core, tokenizing access to online education can solve problems not just for online students, but also for the creators of the content, the people that are actually producing the education. Uppercent is all about basically, as I mentioned, tokenizing access to online education. What that means is rather than you just buying an online course from anywhere, such as Udemy, Coursera, or any other e-learning marketplace that currently exists, one-time access means that you buy the course. Once you're finished with it, you can't do anything with it. You're stuck with it. You might be able to watch it as many times as you want, but you can't give it to a friend or sell your access or do anything. Whereas the traditional education market, if we talk about books, there's a secondary market of books of 24 billion a year. So people might complete a university course and at the end they have spent loads of money on books to take that course, and now they can give them to friends or they can sell them. And that amounts to 24 billion a year in US dollars. Whereas online, all we're currently doing is paying for one-time access, one-time access. We're never owning the IP of access to what we're purchasing. So when I say tokenizing access to online education, I essentially mean owning your access to online education. The monetization model for creators producing online education, in my opinion, is broken, because we have a potential upcoming course with a creator at the moment who is a massive creator on Udemy, has hundreds of thousands of students. And they said to me that the model that we present with Uppercent would reward them and give them a bigger incentive within the space of a few weeks than what they would make incentive-wise by putting that same course on Udemy over a 4-year period. We're solving that problem for online students, and then we're also solving the other side of the coin, which is the incentive structure for the creators as well.
We've talked a little bit about the benefits of the creator, but I like your business model because there's also benefits for the user. And that is the liquidity that you provide for the user when they're done consuming that education. They actually then can bring that online course to a secondary market and share it with somebody else. Can you just, tell me a little bit more about that?
For sure. I definitely think that in terms of a value proposition, if you give someone kind of the option to purchase an online course anywhere online currently, and not be able to resell what they've purchased, or you give them the option of purchasing an online course through us and our model, and they do have the option to resell, I think it's human nature really to choose the route where they can recuperate something, as long as the education is the same, or if not, hopefully better in our case, as we produce all the content in-house. But to me, there's a kind of a much greater meaning. I actually want to share something to demonstrate this point, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free.
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen here, Paul Graham, who is the co-founder of Y Combinator, probably the biggest tech accelerator there is, posted this. This was only in December last year. And it's a chart around how many people make it through Replits, which is, I believe, the biggest code academy that there is online. How many people, make it through their tutorial? And as you can see, over 200,000 people start. And by the end of it, there's probably a few hundred people that are left. Like, this level of churn is crazy. But think of the amount of people that might have paid a couple of $1,000s to want to learn about becoming a coder. And they started with Replit, and they might have found that it just wasn't quite right for them, hence the massive drop off. And therefore, they want to continue trying to become a coder, but now they can't do anything with the purchase they just made. They've just essentially chucked their money down the drain. And therefore, the ability for them to be encouraged to continue learning to become a coder and continue their lifetime learning endeavors is drastically diminished. If this was an occurrence in a model like ours, the people that are kind of purchasing this course, realizing it's not quite for them, they could be selling to other people who want to give the course a go. And therefore, they could be recuperating the funds that they invested into the initial course to then find something that's better suiting for them. So this is a bit of a crazy example. And it's one of those ones that's more like a kind of a draw drop moment. But retention in e-learning is a big problem. And it does often take someone a long time to find the right person that they want to learn from. And as I put here, this is actually a slide from our seed deck, but e-learning dropout rates resulting from that lack of motivation and engagement really produced this massive value waste in the industry, where all of this money's coming in with the hope of generating value, and then that value isn't coming out the other side. And we need to empower students with the possibility to be able to continue searching until they find that value that they're looking for without having to put more into the process.
Yeah, this drop off is shocking. In making that decision to purchase education will come much easier and maybe with less resistance. Like, I'm just thinking for myself, if I know I have a chance to recoup some of those funds on a resale, I probably would be more apt to try. I would take the risk to spend that money if I knew that I could recoup some of it back on a secondary market. So it's really attractive to me as a person who is purchasing an online course.
That first course, you have to come on, and if you participate in the pre-sale, the allow list, you pay in Flare tokens, and then you receive in the pre-sale your access pass, and then you'll be able to use that access pass to access a course on our platform. And then once you're done with it, you'll be able to resell that access pass on a native NFT marketplace, predominantly will be Sparkles. So for a Flare user, that's great. That's completely what they're used to. But what we want to do is be able to build our solution in a way that the everyday online student can use it. The 200 million students that purchased an online course from an online marketplace last year can use it. The way we do that is through Web 2.5. So for me, we have two layers. We have the way that Web 3 works right now, which is wallets, crypto, so on. And then we have Web 2, which is the interface that we're all currently used to, mobile phone applications and so on. And it's about merging those two together so that Web 2 user can be able to interact and take the value from Web 3 without really needing to know that it's Web 3 and it's the blockchain underneath it. So the example with us is pretty much where a user will come on and they'll be able to purchase one of the access passes with their debit card, whether that's on the initial sale of the passes or on the secondary. They will then have that access pass in their Uppercent account. And then once they're finished with the course, they can click sell and they can see the current market price, and then they can list it for sale. Once they sell their pass, that money goes into their balance and then they can withdraw it back to their bank account. So at no moment in time is an online student exposed directly to the blockchain. We cannot expect people to just start learning how to use the blockchain to be able to partake in the ownership of tokenized real world assets. We have to build solutions that enable the everyday user to interact with tokenized assets without even really needing to know what's going on a on a fundamental level with the blockchain.
As I do see that as a big stumbling block for mass adoption, is that we that are in this space daily do use a set of words and terms that are foreign to most everyone out there, and I think it does scare people off, and that's the last thing we want to do. We want to make it friendly and not seem like you have to have a some sort of knowledge base before you can participate. Needs to be, yeah, bundled in a way that everybody can understand.
Yeah, and I played golf with a guy that I haven't met before on Saturday, and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, He's like, "That really confuses me." Like he isn't in the digital world at all, like literally at all. And I was like, "Okay, let me try and explain this through what Uppercent does." So I just explained what we did in the way that I'd broadcast it to the everyday person. He was like, "Wow, that's what the blockchain enables you to do." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, I never saw that. I never understood it. But now that I have an actual practical example, I understand it. So I think the tokenization of real world assets do not just provide value based on what they are, but they'll also educate people indirectly on the value of the blockchain.
One of the best things about Flare, in my opinion, is the decentralized state oracle, and this ability to utilize the FTSOs to provide reliable data, whether it's price or I just saw Hugo did a retweet of an article where the Colorado ranchers, they fiddled with the rain gauges so that they could qualify to get more government funding for a drought, but actually the drought was not as severe as it was reporting because it was being tampered with. So
Wow.
yeah, it's an interesting article. And so I think that we're going to find the decentralized oracle that is pulling that reliable data, and with the use of the FTSOs is really, really important. And so through the XRP community, we both were probably introduced to Flare because of the airdrop. And we've been following Hugo's progress and the team that he's built, which is quite amazing. And I really see Flare as coming into its own and being quite unique and one of the best protocols out there. But I just would love to hear from you what makes Flare special.
Sure. So I'm going to relate this kind of directly to the theme of this talk, which is the tokenization of real world assets. And I spoke previously about Flare's FTSO and how we're already utilizing that to enable us to present a more familiar user interface to online students, by allowing us to kind of price our courses in dollars and then translate that back to the amount that it costs in real time of Flare. But in addition to that, I think Flare, again, as a scalable technology, I don't see us having any problems with. I mean, we've already deployed the smart contract for the first real world asset that we're creating for our first course, and the process was completely seamless. I think the fact that they have Cost on the testing network, which is great, and then also Songbird as the Canary network. And so being able to go through the levels before real mainnet deployment is super helpful, like that infrastructure that they have. And as I already said, like Flare is ultimately very scalable as a technology. And it's also scalable because of the costs. So if, for example, I put a real world asset on Ethereum for the access to online education, and I said, Samar, you can come buy this education pass, it's $79, and they go to complete their transaction, and it says, oh, the fee here is $110 in total because of the ETH gas fee. It's just not usable technology for the mass audience. You can't just start slapping massive fees on top of things. So Flare's low fees is definitely going to help the translation of real world assets to existing industries. And I suppose the other side, I've spoke quite heavily around Web 2.5. And one of the reasons that we went with Flare in the first place is because they showed a deep passion, not just for what we were doing, but wanting to build a home for kind of Web 2.5 so that we can access audiences outside of blockchain and bring them to Flare. So the team behind Flare are very passionate about that. And therefore, we believe in them to be able to get the right infrastructure on the network to enable us to build the solutions that we want to build and become that home for Web 2.5. So yeah, the drive for Web 2.5, the depth of Flair's team, the low cost, the scalability, the testing networks. I was going to add a couple more points. The interoperability of Flair as well, the decentralized nature of Flair through the proof of stake mechanism, the security as well. Also coming into there, you've got layer cake, and also just generally the transparency of the blockchain, and even the fact that there hasn't really been a single point of failure in the network. So that I've kind of just spat out a load of reasons as to why Flair is the perfect home for us, and also why Flair is the perfect home for tokenizing real world assets, which again could be a potential $16 trillion market within the next 5 to 6 years. And I don't think any blockchain is yet to really kind of grab hold of it and say real world assets is ours. So I'm going to do everything in my power, and I hope that you will too, Eri, to try and bring that narrative and stick it on Flair.
I'm working on it, Jake. I'm working on it. I'm really glad you brought all those points. They're so important for everyone to know. So thanks for spending your afternoon with me. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.